so courageous of those victims to come forward to put a stop to this happening more. They had to put everything on the line because coming out and speaking about something like that is extremely painful personally. But then that layer of like, not only am I speaking out against this person that hurt me, but also I'm losing my family while doing so. Hey, what's up, guys? It's Ex-Morgan with My Spiritual Life. I'm so excited because I have AJ back. I think he's on this side,
Yes.
talking with me about La Luz Del Mundo, a mega church slash cult that is largely located in Mexico. So AJ is an ex-member of La Luz Del Mundo. He grew up in that church. A lot of his families are still, active members of that church and that community. And today, AJ is going to give us a really awesome recap over what happened after Naason Garcia, the apostle, the leader of that mega church, was arrested. And because just recently, things have kind of exploded with that situation. So I'm really excited to hear AJ explain what's been going on and update us about that, as well as like what the members are thinking about it and everything. So
For
AJ
sure.
has an awesome YouTube channel, by the way, called The Money Store, where he talks a lot more about all of this stuff. Great resource. We're going to have other resources down below that are ex-LLDM related. I'm also going to link below all the other videos I've done with AJ in the past, as well as any other LLDM videos I've done. Okay, so here we go. AJ,
Yes.
tell us,
That was great.
actually,
Uh-huh.
thank you. Tell us
That's really good.
before you take us from where we left off in our last videos together, give us a brief recap of like who Naason is, why he got arrested, what he was arrested for, and then kind of catch us up from there.
Yes. So to basically for everyone in the public, thank you for having me on. I would say that yeah, La Luz del Mundo is a church that's headquartered in Guadalajara, basically based in Mexico. And they have this top leader who is, theologically the top leader, and also in basically every other aspect because of the theology, which is interesting, and it sort of explains a lot of the whole situation right now. On Monday, June 3rd, 2019, he was arrested in Los Angeles. He got off a private flight with a woman who was a parishioner of the church, and yeah, they were both arrested. He got a large bail that ended up, sort of changing over time, but for the most part, it was $90 million, the highest bail ever set over there. There was a variety of charges implicating him and three other women that include crimes towards children, sexual crimes towards children, recording of these things, trafficking, sexual trafficking, human trafficking, extortion. It was a sort of constellation of charges like that. They were very serious with a very large bail, and in Los Angeles, and one woman, so two women were caught. One was with him at the time, getting off the private flight. Another one was caught at her workplace somewhere in California, I'm pretty sure. She was I'm talking about Alondra Ocampo. And then a third woman is still on the run. She's never been seen for just years. She's still, to this day,
Oh.
still on the run. And
Wait, do you think the church is hiding her somewhere?
it's very possible that the church is hiding her, just like other people have sort of alleged that these sort of kidnapping activities are happening. But I can't exactly confirm beyond what has been said in the court.
Gotcha.
But
And
yeah, there's a possibility that people are being hidden, for sure. That there's a larger network of people covering up.
crazy. This is crazy. And the bail, the reason they set it so crazy high, my understanding is because they were afraid that the membership would raise that amount of money and then get him out and he would run, right? Was that kind of the idea there?
That's part of it. So for sure, I think it's dependent mostly on whether he's a flight risk, and so the bail is, that there's a sort of social agreement, that there's an agreement between the state and the defendant over a certain amount of money, and that money is a sort of it's bail money. Yeah, there's a certain system to it. So part of it is that he got such a high number because of the number of people that are behind him and the sort of ideas that are held about him, the sort of influence he holds over the community, the church. But then it is also about his flight risk and what his sort of network is to evade the hands of the U.S. law. And so, one possibility that was that I had read somewhere was, just to sort of show how easy it might be, is to travel to Cuba, and there is no extradition treaty over there, and
And
there's no
then he's
possibility of
just a
that.
free man.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be
Um,
terrible.
but either way, the dude has a large amount of money, given the sort of lawyers
Mm.
he's hired and all that stuff. There's plenty of reports on how many properties he owns all over the place on both sides of the border, and
Right, right.
and then on top of that, there's all these people that probably could have one to two, if they really wanted to raise all that money to bail him out, which never happened. But still, there was a seriousness shown to the financial power that this group of people at the top of the organization have.
God sure does love
Uh-huh.
his prophets being rich. Like,
Yeah.
he it's very important to him that they are well off.
Hmm.
Oh my god. Okay, okay. So, back to the timeline. Back to the timeline.
Yes.
After he gets arrested, they schedule the trial.
Hmm. And basically, I can go over the first year or two, and that's very bumpy. But I'd say, there's plenty of resources that I'm going to end up talking about over the course of the conversation. But um, yeah, I think for the sake of still sort of being brief and giving,
Yeah, because we
because
did
we
go
because we
into a
talked
lot
about
of
a lot of
details in
these
the other
things.
video. Yeah, so maybe
Yeah.
just like a recap, because I know it was like
Hmm.
switching lawyers and all this and all that, but
Yeah. Yeah.
essentially,
Definitely.
yeah, kept
But,
getting pushed back for different
mhm.
things.
I'd say over the course of 3 years, there's been a number of things going on. Very, very important lawyers involved with Nason, the likes of people like Alan Jackson, who has defended Kevin Spacey in the past, is defending him now. Like literally a week after he was done, hanging out with Naason in the courtroom and so on. He's literally in the UK. He was in the UK hanging
Right.
out with Kevin Spacey. Whatever opinion people have of people like Kevin Spacey and Harvey Weinstein, whom he's also defended.
Right.
Whatever opinion people have of these guys, there's a common denominator, and that these are all people that are that might very likely be doing horrific things with the amount of power that they wield in the film industry and
Sketchy
the
stuff
religion
going on.
and the religious
Yeah.
industry in Mexico. Um, uh, yeah, so there's been very important lawyers involved. They switched actually 2-3 months into 2019 and after the arrest, but over the course of the longer period of time, it has been Alan Jackson that's been involved. A lot of
Mhm.
money has probably been shuffled into his pockets, into the pockets of his firm. There's one
Mhm.
estimate from Isaías Alvarado over at Univision. He has dozens upon dozens of articles, and that include interviews and everything. He really knows a lot of the details. People can go check him out, check out his work. He's the number one journalist to visit. Uh, Again, it's Isaías Alvarado, and and it's very easy to translate this stuff. But yeah, there was this one report he did since the last time that we spoke. That this is why I bring it up. That there's been an estimate that Alan Jackson has probably taken out like $3 million out of Nason's pockets, something like that. And if not, probably perhaps even more since the longer since the longer duration of this whole thing. But this is a person who is an asset on his side that has been very
Mm.
important to the whole process. And yeah, that's a sort of character to know. Mhm.
Dang.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's a lot of money. I was not
Hmm.
expecting like that. I mean, even for this lasting years, that's a lot of money. Okay, so then
Hmm.
last we talked, we kind of it was September
Yeah,
and the
it
trial
was in
was
August of
scheduled.
last year, and
Right.
but by that point, the trial was set for the following month. So we spoke like sometime mid-August, and it was set
Yeah,
to start in late September. But on September 17th, there was a pre-trial meeting, and what
right.
happened is, there was I'm not going to get into the sort of arguments that were made, but they basically shuffled. They basically had to do with certain documents being not handed over, certain evidence not being handed over to the defense, which it totally was by then. You know, if you read deep enough into this, into the longer scheme of things,
Right.
the defense has always had access to the evidence, to a
They
point.
tried to push
To,
it back on a technicality,
yeah,
basically.
yeah. There's,
Like,
you know,
"Well,
there's a
we
lot of
didn't get the
technicalities, and
paperwork." Got it,
yeah,
okay.
these are very expensive lawyers, and this is an expertise that is bought within within the larger system of the justice, within the larger networks of the justice system. And
They
this is
wanna
a
buy
man who can be
themselves
brought
more
into the orbit,
time.
and they've done a very good job, the lawyers, of you know, prolonging this whole situation. And
Question, what's the
yeah,
benefit of prolonging it? Because that seems like their game
uh-huh.
plan from the beginning was just like, "Let's just keep pushing it back." Like, what benefit is that, just to plan more for the trial? Like,
Plan more, think more. It also buys the church hierarchy time to make it seem like, hey, look, we're almost winning. You know, just keep waiting, just stay
I
loyal.
see, I see.
It buys time for everybody, and plus, you know, spoiler alert, but at the very end, right before the trial starts, that the man decides to plead guilty and denies everyone the sudden,
Right,
long process of reckoning, which would be the court, you know, the entire trial. Uh,
right.
we were all anticipating that for so long, both sides, and then, you know, it was within his hands to sort of decide this, to plead guilty to a little bit and not face the longer duration of super duper scrutiny.
I see, I see.
Yeah, to deny that. So, and plus, yeah, just prolonging the thing is, it sucks for everyone, because we weren't in those rooms. We weren't, you know, we weren't
Yeah,
present when the crimes took place. Very few people were present there, and there's a group of people, the courtroom, the lawyers, etc., who are all trying to argue amongst themselves and, you know, discuss and figure out, hey, how do we fairly figure
right.
out what the hell happened in these rooms when we weren't there? Um, and
Yeah,
here we have people that are talking or probably not talking, you know, based upon their rights. And you know, Nason, within very, you know, if he was any average person, he for sure took his rights into account. He got very knowledgeable people, and he said he basically took the thing of took the stance of, he's literally uttered like less than 10 words the whole time, within that he's been in these courtrooms. You know, it's always been, yes, sir, not guilty, you know, just small phrases.
and
Never has he
honestly,
said
it's
a long
smart.
sentence.
That's probably
Yeah,
smart because he could shoot
yeah,
himself in the foot. Like, I imagine,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, I see what you're saying. I see what you're
So
saying.
yeah, you know, he's for sure was within his rights the entire time. But
Yeah.
the again, you know, a very important part of this thing is the power of religious belief, and how, even, you know, taking those sorts of stances and taking, um, you know, sort of, not being very cooperative within the whole situation in the way that he could have been, and the way that
Yeah.
he sort of preaches about himself, you know, being a sort of larger than life figure. And he could have, you know, manifested his powers and his semi divinity within the courtroom, but, you know, he never did. So anyways, but I
Yeah,
just want to say this
yeah.
very quickly, but within
Of
his
course.
rights the entire time. He's been within his rights. I respect that. I don't question it.
Yeah.
But again, we know when it comes to the sort of power that he has over people, it's been a very sort of, just a tragic event to see unfold, how this person who's has so
Absolutely.
much trust over people that he's not met, you know, manages to squander it really badly for a lot of people, and you know, really abuses power in a way that he shouldn't have.
It's it's
Yeah,
it's a scary thing, and I think this religion shows us how dangerous it is when you're in this a group or a religion or whatever, where you're taught to trust and respect this authority, and to not question it, and just how many kids suffered because they were taking advantage of someone that they were taught to trust. So even if it's a particularly harmless religion, and I would not refer to La Luz del Mundo as harmless, but
yeah,
even if it were just teaching people to idolize these figures as if they're, perfect and they will never hurt you, can be dangerous. And this
yeah.
is so evident in this example with Nason. Okay, so back to the timeline, unless you had anything to add.
No, basically, I would say is, damn, I appreciate, the way you word this and the way, the way you understand it. You and I have not talked about yeah, at length, we really about our lack of
Yeah.
religious belief, but, I'm sure that, to some extent, I would say that, you and I probably arrived at that sort of position, through me personally, these realizations that, that there are consequences to the beliefs that people, take on, and there's consequences to the environment that you put certain people in,
Mhm.
that exposes them to constant, you could say, religious propaganda or certain repetitions of um, of certain thoughts, the dogmatism, I think that is a problem at root of every of every set of religious beliefs. That
Or any
there's a certain,
ideology, right?
yeah,
Dogma can be dangerous, right? It really
yeah,
can be, like, regardless of the group you're in, just because it's like if you're putting these ideas or people on a pedestal, those things can be wrong, and when those and if you're unwilling to see that, it can just be really scary. Like, for
mhm,
example, the parents of the victims in this situation, like, they put their kids in a situation that they probably otherwise wouldn't have. You know what I mean? Like, where they
yeah.
were able to be abused because, again, this dogma and this ideology
This
of,
very
like,
like trusting, yeah. That's
yeah,
something
yeah,
that comes up in, that's something that comes up in everyone's testimony, where everyone says that,
yeah.
that at the hearing that there was an array of people that spoke, including the Jane Does, and some parent. I think there was a parent or two. There was a brother. There was a number of people, at least like around 10ish
Mhm.
people. I don't have an exact count, but yeah, they all talked about, growing up in, an environment and believing stuff. Mhm.
And when
Yes,
you
go on, go on.
reference yeah, yeah, and when you reference Jane Doe, for people who might not understand what that means, it's
Right,
the
right.
anonymous victims. So not
Mhm,
all victims were, openly sharing their name and their face and everything, and so when we say the Jane Does, we're talking about the victims who
mhm.
came forth during the trial.
Yeah,
Um,
ultimately there were 5 Jane Does and there were 2 John Does.
got it,
So it's
got it.
seven people within this, one particular criminal case that were,
It makes
speaking.
you
Uh-huh.
it really does make you wonder, like, if 7 came forward, how many more are there? Because
Mhm.
7 is a lot, and
Yeah.
people, even when they know they were abused, it is hell to put yourself through a trial like that. I can only imagine, and so, like, I imagine even if they knew what happened was wrong, they may not want to drudge it up. So I'm
Mhm.
just like, if there was 7 that came forward, we know there's more, like, it's scary, and it's
Mhm.
scary how he got away with it for so long, and it's scary how little time he got sentenced, but we'll get into that. Okay, sorry,
Yeah, for sure.
back to the timeline.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So back to the sort of timeline, but yeah, there was a large kick, of time, and really nothing really happened too much from, I'd say, September up until, May, June, which is things, really starting to heat up. I could say, over the past, since the last time that we spoke, I could say there was there's probably a notable, segment that was aired on a network, maybe with the interview with a particular person, a YouTube at one point in February, a YouTube channel, that is probably one of the most peripheral ones on the platform. It's called Innovation Group Channel. On its own initiative, reached out to the lawyer of Alondra Ocampo, who is one of the 3, co-conspirators who ended up pleading guilty, in 2020. So she was
Okay,
someone
so
who
wait,
was. Mhm.
pause for just a second. When you
Yes.
say this YouTube channel, what is this? Is it a news channel, or is it associated with the
Uh-huh.
church, or what is it?
No, there's a channel called, Innovation Group Channel. This is a sort of channel
Yeah,
who is made by a dude who I'm pretty sure didn't attend who didn't attend La Luz del Mundo or anything, but just somehow he just
okay.
knows about it, and he just kind of has his channel that it seems like a sort of hobby, a side thing that he does.
Okay,
But
okay, so
he
he's
does
just
he does videos on other things that I look at, and sort
got
of
it.
think, yeah, this isn't interesting. This doesn't look like
Okay.
something I would read or
Got
consume.
it, got it. So
But
he
he.
reached out to one of the girls that was arrested in one of the women
Mhm.
that was
One of
arrested
them.
in conjunction. Okay,
Yes.
and
And so the
what
interesting thing
about
about
that?
it is that we knew, the lawyer of Alondra Ocampo was Fred Thiagaraja, and we all knew who
Mhm.
he was. we all knew that in October 2020 she decided to plead guilty because that was, his bail hearings had completely ended by that point. His second round of bail hearings
Oh,
had ended by that point, and she thought, okay, he's arrested. I'm going to change to guilty so I can testify against him. We knew since back then
for
that
a
Fred
plea
Figueroa
deal.
was a lawyer, but for
Oh.
some reason, the me and the array of people around me just never reached out to Fred to see if we could just talk to him. Uh,
Mhm.
and we know the prosecutors were never going to talk to anybody for sure, but there's this lawyer, Fred, who he did speak in February of this year, 2022, with this random YouTube channel. And no offense to this YouTube channel, I'm really glad that he did he
Right,
did
right.
the interview. But we learned a couple things sort of there. That's something that happened, but no, ultimately all the real interesting stuff like happened in May and June. And so what
Mm,
happens in
mm.
May, within a minute, what happens in May is that there is a pretrial conference, and it becomes clear more than ever before that the trial is about to happen. And then it is set
Right.
for June because
No
one of the
more buying time, right? They
yeah,
were
no,
like,
no more
"Okay,
buying time.
alright." Yeah.
And we were all thinking that we had just gone through the longest punt, which was from September all the way to May. That was the longest
Mhm.
punt ever given to the defense. The prosecutors had said that they were ready. That they were ready. They had everything in line. They complied, fully. And um, yeah, in May they basically they have a pretrial conference. They're ready to start. One of the defense lawyers has something to do, so they kick it another month. Okay, and then it's basically about set to start on June 6th, and on June 3rd, I believe a Friday of this year. I have my calendar out because this is important, and I've also haven't really.
Or
Yeah, June 3rd, Friday, the 3-year anniversary of his
oh
arrest.
my god.
Yeah,
Happy
he,
anniversary, Naason.
yeah, he decides to plead guilty, and
That's the for people who don't
mhm,
remember, that's the 3-year anniversary of the day he got arrested in
yeah,
LA.
yeah, for
That's
sure.
so
All the
funny.
way in
So then
2019, and then all the way
he
to
pleads guilty, and this is
mhm.
very last minute, right? Because the trial's about to happen.
It's very last minute. It's very it was
Why
really
do you
astonishing. Mhm.
why do you think, or what are people saying, or maybe tell me both, like, why the guilty plea?
It's so interesting. I think there's a lot to say, and I had to write some notes down just about where my mindset was that day, where everyone's mindset sort of was, and the things that I heard, and yeah. So
Right.
um, June 3rd is the Friday. It's the anniversary. The thing is, jury selection is about to start on June 6th,
Mhm.
and that could take a handful of days. So we were all ready for the sort of longer timeline that would stretch into July. We were
Right,
we
and
were
all of a
ready
sudden
for
it
this weeks
just
long process.
abruptly ends. Right,
Yeah.
right.
So I will say that one of the important things that I think someone told me was that to sort of understand why the process went the way that it did, where he last minute decided to plead guilty. This person told me sometimes it's not about making the right move; it's about making the first move. And so what everyone has sort of basically thought that the thinking is for the church and for the man in question in this trial was that they the idea is that he would rather sort of plead guilty and sort of paint himself a little bit up as a martyr in the way that Jesus Christ also went through a court playing uh,
Ah!
yeah, but so plays
Oh
himself up
my
as a martyr,
god.
plays himself up as a martyr,
Which I would
says
say is
he would
smart.
rather choose this.
I would say it's smart in the terms of trying to maintain the faith, right?
It's
Like,
it's it's that
there's a dual
uh,
strategy here, right? Because it's how can I get the least amount of time, but also, like, how can I get the church to lose as few members as possible? It's probably all going through his mind, so I think taking the guilty plea, setting himself up as the victim was probably, like, acting like, "Oh, it's a conspiracy, all these members are out to get me,"
yeah.
or whatever. Okay, okay. Alright, go ahead, go ahead. So interesting.
No, you're totally right about that. It is it was basically if we all it's always been within its hands. It's always been within his
Yeah.
hands, and for sure there's a number of people, bishops that are around him that we'll eventually talk about their reactions and their role in this whole thing. But he is the charismatic figure at hand, and there are people around him that can that can advise him, that can we are not privy to those conversations either.
Right, right.
And those must be incredibly interesting. I would love to have have listened in on them, just to sort of been a fly
Right.
on the wall and see how the whole situation has played out over there. Um, I would say that I was going to say that it's yeah, we're not privy to that stuff, but it's been about controlling the narrative, and then also how do I get the hell out of this thing? And it's been a balancing act the
Yes.
whole time. And again, as an ordinary citizen, he was well within his right to do all these things that he was doing. To hire this person, to prolong it this long,
Right,
to
right.
say the very least amount of words that he wants to say within that courtroom. For sure, I respect that. Yeah, I totally respect that. But at the same time, it's also been about this narrative that he holds of himself outside of that courtroom and outside of that process and outside of the conversations with the lawyers. He's not talking about. I'm pretty sure he's not talking with the lawyers about how, hey, do you have any advice on how to run my cult? With his lawyers, he's just talking about the strict business of help me get out of this situation. Yes, I have
Right.
some people over here that like me and think of me in a certain way, but you don't hold those beliefs, obviously.
The
So
lawyers
we're
are
just
just
talking
thinking
business.
of minimizing the sentence or
Yeah,
minimizing the
yeah,
individual backlash.
and
I That makes sense.
um and so yeah, no, ultimately on Friday, June 3rd, he decides that yeah, I'm going to plead guilty. That was probably his plan the entire time. But again, uh, we understand him as an ordinary citizen doing that stuff, but him as the narrative, which is the most frustrating part for everyone who really knows who this person is and what his life
Yeah.
is revolved around. Um, that there's a narrative that he was holding of himself across over to other people, and uh,
And that
and uh, and
narrative
and
is what
and,
exactly? Like
and
being the
yes,
victim or
and
yes.
and that narrative is that he is a sort of Christ-like figure on earth, and that he speaks to God and Jesus and all that, and he takes process through him. He forgives your sins. He holds that over people, but
This is like
uh,
some Crime and Punishment shit going on here.
yeah, and then
Well,
also at the same time, within a feature of a lot of cults is that they have these ready-made excuses for why they're not being accepted by the larger group of people, and one thing would be the church members saying that the faith is not planted within you, it's planted within me. You don't understand. We actually
yeah,
do know this person. He has been the example. They experience them in certain ways, and they don't really understand the consequences of uh of a mass number of people believing these dogmatic things about him, and
yeah,
that ends up getting some people to have their children go hang out with this person in private, and
yeah. And getting them
uh,
to stay even when he pleads guilty, right? Like,
yeah, yeah,
leading them to that conclusion. See, I think this is so interesting, and people on the outside may not get it because they think, "Oh, you're a cult, mega church leader or whatever, just pled guilty to, like, terrible, terrible crimes. Like, I guess you should probably leave that church." And
mhm,
that's happening with some people, but it's not happening with a lot of them, and part of the reason is the intense conditioning, right? But also you have this persecution complex that
yes, yes, definitely.
really feeds into this issue of like, oh my gosh, like, look, he told me how the world was going to persecute him and how, and look, now they are, it like, it turns into this confirmation bias. Like it turns into this, like, almost like causing you to believe more instead of like causing you to doubt for people that are really heavily indoctrinated. So
Yeah,
it's
for
like,
sure.
it's weird looking outside in, but you have to understand that their framework for the way that they see the world and see him is just so delusional that, like, even something that seems like it has a lot of evidence backing up can be explained away by, oh, it's a conspiracy or it's whatever. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Mhm. Yeah, it's dude, you totally hit it out the park. I agree with so much of that, and it is definitely all those things. It's a very sort of complex web of ideas and environment and the power of religious belief and the very legitimate experiences that people have within these religious settings.
Yeah.
I don't deny that people have,
Right, like
powerful
at the
experiences in
revival.
there.
Yeah,
Yes,
right,
yes.
right,
I don't deny that, but
right.
but I would just I just wish that this set of people and lots of other sets of religions would understand that those sorts of experiences are being had within a certain environment that explains them in a certain way, and one feature, and those experiences are not unique to them, and they while they can probably notice that these experiences and the nice feelings that having these strong beliefs have. Strong
Right.
beliefs can give you nice feelings. They give you a sort of sense of security, euphoria. It comes in a lot of shapes, but um, these people are experiencing it in a certain environment, and that environment also allows for this man who ends up abusing his power and his place within that system of belief of La Luz del
Yeah.
Mundo. He abuses the power, and yeah, there is this route to explain what's going on by calling it a sort of just a larger conspiracy, which there's always been persecution narratives, and yeah, Nason has been about one narrative he could have taken, which is what he took, is that we've been persecuted, and this is just God. One ways I've heard saying it is, this is God dusting the rug. He's trying to see who's really firm in this whole thing. This is a purification sort of process. Um,
Oh my gosh, like,
yeah,
he's trying to shake off those that he's testing their faith, right? That's
yeah.
what it is. See, and this is so interesting because this narrative, it's not, it's not, exclusive to La Luz del Mundo, like, I've heard that, in Mormonism and kind of like, I would say in the set of Mormonism that I grew up in because my parents didn't really practice Mormonism orthodoxly, like normally, and
Yeah.
like they would say things like that to me specifically because I haven't heard other Mormons say it so much or ex-Mormons like talk about that, but they would say things like, "Oh, the reason this bad thing is happening that's causing you to lose your faith is actually because God's trying to test you. Like
Mhm.
God's almost like God's messing with you." And like it's almost
Yeah.
like he wants you to leave or something like, and it just again pulls at those deep layers of conditioning that are trying to keep you from questioning and trapped from leaving. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Also sort of speaking to our sort of lack of religious belief. It's about imagining this actor that is outside of you, God, and it's this actor whose acts you can't judge, because who are you to judge them? He is much wiser, and is much more, is omnipotent, and there's other characteristics that are placed upon this thing that is what we would say is imagined, and while there may be utilities to that, it might actually lead some people to not do bad things. um uh that that sort of religious belief in higher beings and whatnot, is not unique to any religion, and it shows up in all of them, and that there's always this element of dogma, and there's this element of it being difficult to to get people to think outside of it, and
Yeah.
not feel gaslit. That's a word that
Yeah.
a lot of us have learned over the years, over these past years, is what gaslighting is, and what sort of um yeah, I'll just stop there, but that's what
Yeah,
I was going
that's
to discuss.
perfect. That's
uh
perfect. Okay, so tell me, like,
mhm,
from your perspective, and then maybe share the perspective of, other people if you know it, when he pleaded guilty. How
mhm.
did you feel? Were you frustrated that they couldn't go through with the trial? Were you frustrated with the
Yeah.
amount of time he got? Well, and I guess first recap how much time he got.
Yes. Yeah. I'll discuss the sort of details that
Yeah,
happened,
go
but
ahead.
I can't remember what the exact last meeting was prior to Friday, June 3rd, when he decides to plead guilty. But within that whole week, we were all ready for the trial to begin on June 6th. That was that June 6th. That was a date everyone was looking forward to. That week prior to it. Um, And then within my head, me personally, did I ever think that, yeah, would this man plead guilty? I knew that that was a possibility. I knew that was a certain path that we
Yeah.
could take within once we got deep into the process. Um,
Yeah.
but I told myself I'm not going to entertain that because that gets really um, windy. Just like basically every other path is, another path that would be,
Yeah.
what about if there is a trial? He does decide to do that, to go through that process. That's very windy. It depends on a lot of factors. Um, so we knew I knew that was a possibility. That Friday, did it catch me off guard? No, but I definitely was really good at not thinking about it. Then the news
Yeah.
came around like midday, sort of trickling into the afternoon hours. The details were coming out, and basically what it kind of boils down to is that there was some sort of meeting right then and there on that Friday that no one was privy to except I guess the prosecutors and the defense. I don't know if Nason's is there, but basically there's a deal that is decided where hey he wants to plead guilty to yeah, and then I'm not too sure how that discussion goes, but what happens is that he is only made to sit through 16 years plus 8 months. I believe that's the right number.
Yeah.
It's
That's what I
around
heard.
there. It's around there. But taking into account the 3 years that he has already been detained from the public, that goes towards that. So he's only going to be in another 13. He's going to technically come out when he is into his mid to late 70s.
Oh
But again, people are saying that this man will still pose a danger once he's that old and once he's back out um, of the charges that he accepted. It was only three of them. None of the three that were accepted had to do with Jane Doe 4 and Jane Doe 5. But I believe all the Jane Does basically spoke at the sentencing hearing. So again, we don't know how these negotiations work.
yeah.
Is the state of California taking into account how many resources and time and all these other things are going to be dedicated to a trial? Are they
Yeah.
taking into account who he has hired and what their history is of them with this person, with Alan Jackson and his other array of people around him? Uh, we don't know what any of that is,
Yeah.
but basically it comes down to that number. It's basically another 13-ish more years. I don't know about nice behavior and how that factors into it, but it could lessen. But he is locked away for years. That is for sure.
Which is
And
good, but I think the undertone is a lot of people were hoping for life based on
yes, for sure.
is that yeah, because like you said, we're worried that he's still a threat to people, and especially with the membership trusting him so much even after this comes out, you worry like how he might take advantage of people moving forward. But I'm curious, do you know anything, and you might know nothing about this, but do you know why it is that he only accepted the plea deal with the 3 counts and not with, like, the the other ones? Was that just the ones that they had enough proof for, or do you know much
I'm
about
not.
that?
I am not too sure
That's okay.
about
That's okay.
those. I wish I could give more sentences and say like this one wasn't accepted because this one could be considered this charge could be considered the faultiest of all of them. I can't
See.
say I can't rank order them. We weren't we didn't look at those hard drives. We didn't go to those labs that
Makes sense, makes sense.
that contain that stuff.
No
I really
worries, no
wonder,
worries.
but I really wonder though
Yeah,
because then I also people have had criticisms of the prosecution and they have had criticisms of the judge also of these people who we weren't necessarily not criticizing, but we were understanding why they were reacting in certain ways, and these were the people that were also defending the people that had come out in the first place. For sure, a healthy dose of skepticism is needed, and but nevertheless, but not and I will say on that note that within the past month, for sure, the past couple of weeks, everyone has been critical of the judges in a way that La Luz Del Mundo members can be critical of the judges. The way that they're
okay.
critical at the judges and the prosecutors would be like conspiracy theories, ideas of these
Yeah,
people being tools of the devil. These people are
I
trying to test our
see.
faith. But for us, who are thinking more clearly, no offense, not to be condescending, but we are thinking more clearly.
Right.
We can think, okay, now that we know this information that they underplayed this way, what does this mean for everything that we have been told over time? Um,
I see, I
and then
see.
also It also kind of has to do with on the day of June 3rd, the prosecutors last minute met up with the last minute notified everyone involved, all the survivors of this case, all the Jane Does. The Jane Does, made it a point to say in their statements at the sentencing hearing on June 8th, 2022, so a couple weeks ago. They made it a point within their speeches, largely pointed at Luz Del Mundo and Nason, but at some point in their
Um,
speeches, yes.
Really quick, just to explain that a little bit more. What happened
Mhm.
was he pleads guilty, but then they have a hearing before the judge where the victims get a
Yes.
chance to kind of
Mhm.
speak about what happened and how they feel with the hope that the judge would push for more time. Is that understood correctly? Okay, go ahead. So
Yes.
you were saying that the Jane Does were saying
Mhm.
at that sentencing hearing, it is heartbreaking. Some of the stuff they
Yes.
said, like
So yeah.
horrifying.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
sure, for sure. Thank you for pointing to the process. So yeah, we were at
yeah.
June 3rd. He decides to plead guilty. The Jane Does had 15 minutes to show up to the courtroom. Is what they said later in the sentencing hearing. But they basically said that day for them was that there was a meetings that went on that where they weren't present, that they weren't privy to, that decisions were made where they found out last minute, and so basically they said that, yeah, 15, we had to show up 15 minutes, we had 15 minutes to show up to the courtroom um on that Friday, and we don't like that the prosecutors underplayed like this. um and so then he pleads guilty. Sentencing hearing is set for the 8th, a Wednesday. uh
Wait, when
the
you
8th.
say they had 15 minutes to show up to do what?
Yeah.
Because the sentencing hearing wasn't that day. So what is
Yeah.
it that they wanted to show up for
I,
on
I'm not.
Friday?
I'm not too sure what exactly, but they basically
Okay,
showed up to
okay.
be to. They were basically notified at the very last minute that a decision had been reached, where
Oh, okay,
the dude would
okay,
be negotiated with the state, because it's the state that's
okay.
handling this thing. They make the decisions.
And it
The
just very caught them off guard, I imagine, because they were ready
Yeah,
to go to trial the next week.
yeah.
I
They were
see.
preparing for that sort of stuff, and they likely, by that point, with the prosecutors already discussed
I see.
strategy and what to say, what not to say, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, then June 8th. I would say the 6th was for sure. Me, I would inject something, me personally, where I spoke to some people. That was the hardest day, where this sort of we were denied this grand thing of a trial that we were all thinking about. That was going to be this own chess game of its
Yes.
own. We were all denied
Right.
that,
And
and
just getting the
mhm,
truth out there in a more, like, obvious way, like, and just getting it all out there in the open for everyone to see, I imagine, like, would have felt vindicating in some ways, like, look at all of these terrible things that happen. So it
mhm,
must have been such a huge letdown for so many reasons. 1, for the amount of, and then the amount of years he got, and then 2, yeah, like this really anticlimactic, like we want this battle. We want to fight this battle, and
mhm.
gosh, yeah, to be thrown for a loop so last minute, it must have been really hard, especially for the Jane and John Does, like that were God, like what a mental game. The trial had
Yeah.
already been pushed back for so long, and then to just like
Be denied
crazy.
it, and having
Yeah,
to concentrate a lot of at what everyone had pent up over time, had to
yeah,
concentrate all that to just a sentencing hearing where an array of people spoke for a good chunk of, more than 15 minutes. I think everyone for sure, technically, but so some people spoke longer, especially the Jindos. But I'm very grateful for them and everything that they have done, and them going through this process, because while the
it's
process
so
has been
hard.
hard for me personally, and for certain people around me that I know that are absolutely not involved in this court, in this trial at all, but just through the networks and just through the larger religious community, have
Yeah,
been involved in this. Yeah, it was very harrowing for me, very difficult day, and me talking to you is actually the first time I've ever talked to at length with someone about this thing.
yeah,
But yeah, basically, I haven't uploaded anything because I've just been sort of chewing on it and thinking, and
it's a lot.
we'll get to what's come out, but again, but back to the Jane and John Does, I think they're the most critical people within this whole situation,
Yeah,
and
And my understanding is that some of
Yes,
them were kind of ostracized by their families or their communities because of speaking out against Nason.
yes.
Did you hear about that? Because yeah, it's like in the religion, La Luz del Mundo, Nason, he's not just the leader of the church, like he's almost like a god himself. And so
He's
speaking
a
out
medium
against
between
him,
humanity and God, at the
yes,
very least.
yes,
And then there's also certain characteristics that come from it, that come in from both sides, that sort of excuse uh,
right.
different beliefs and excuse different behaviors. But yeah,
And
that is who he is.
so courageous of those victims to come forward to basically to put a stop to this happening more, because obviously it was still going on in my mind. I imagine that it was still going on, and so they had to put everything on the line, like, because coming out and speaking about something like that is extremely painful personally, but then that layer of like, not only am I speaking out against this person that hurt me, but
Mhm.
also I'm losing my family while doing so. Do you know
Yeah.
any more about the details of that? Because I've heard a little bit
Mhm.
about it, but not much, like about them kind of being ostracized because of speaking out.
Yes. So I actually did. You're asking a bunch of questions. My mind's going all over the place. I'm
Yep,
really
take
glad.
notes. You're good.
I'm really glad to be talking to you, and I love that you know, from your perspective and your point of um, your point of life and your upbringing, you can manage to see how religious belief, you know, takes place in a different shape over here. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
so I would say that uh, I, I, I would say the sixth, no, not the sixth, the 3rd of June of this year, you know, was very hard for me because I think that was the hardest day. That day was really hard for me. The day after that was pretty hard, where all I wanted to do was just sort of sit and just think and just think and think and think of okay,
Yeah.
what's going to be said at the sentencing hearing? Why the
Mm.
slow? You know, the level of clarity that I'm speaking with right now is something that I have gotten to over the course of time. You know, after just letting the engines run since that day. Um,
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
I think that was the hardest day for me. I sort of wanted to speak to some people, and I didn't want to speak to some people. Everyone was sort of, you know, realizing that okay, this big mountain that we thought was going to happen, you know, managed to crumble within eyesight. And again, that's within
Yeah.
Nason's right to do. He can plead guilty. We understand that,
Yeah.
but the religious beliefs, you know, are very consequential in this whole thing. Um, he ends up sort of playing himself up as a martyr, as like, hey, I'm the leader of this organization. Uh, the medium between humanity and the heavens. And I would rather concede a little bit this much in order to spare everyone else of the ordeal of being put through this long trial. Which, you know, what is the latest long interesting trial that has gone on in the news? It would be Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, which, you know, that's really
Yeah.
interesting. In terms of just, there's a lot to read if you want to read it. Um,
Yeah.
and the same thing with this organization. You know, a lot can be read from this organization if it was going to be played out over several weeks in this trial, which is what I really wanted to happen. That was the ideal thing of, you know, I want to put this organization and the beliefs it holds and this family and this man and the consequences of religious belief. You know, I want to put them on trial in a certain way where we can speak
Yeah.
straightly without thinking that there's conspiracies involved and evidence and phone logs and very and numbers and details
Yes,
specific specific
like
minute by minute things. You know,
proof.
yeah, yeah.
Physical proof, and yeah, yeah, right.
Um, and Mormon. Oh my God! You know, before I forget, my mind's going all over the place. But
Of
before I
course,
forget,
of course.
since we last spoke, I learned that one of my colleagues, a sort of a person that I work close to, is also an ex-Mormon. I think from Utah, and
No
when
way.
yeah, and we had worked a little bit with one another, and then eventually we got to speaking about about the topic of
Right.
religion and Mormonism and etc. And I mentioned them to you, and I think I don't think they knew you, but they probably checked you out. But, you know, I mentioned them to you, and I also spoke to them about it. And I was also telling them about this thing that I was going through. I bring that
Right,
up
right.
because, you know, Mormonism is a certain community that, you know, that has this negative, not to say negative side in a bad way, but has this other side to it where there's people that have gotten out for an array of reasons. We have,
Right.
we are a religious or community that has people that have gotten out of the religious community, that have opinions, that have views about
Right.
the religious community they grew up in. And, a thing that's very unique to us is that we had this trial that we thought that we thought was gonna happen. That was a very unique, high stakes moment of reckoning. And Mormons don't necessarily have something like that, for something
Right.
later.
Right.
It's not like
No.
all the guys at the top were going to be set on trial at the same time, But for us,
No.
there was this one central figure, and that was going to be that was going to have that happen to him. But again, within his rights, I respect that, within his rights, that he
Yeah.
decided to plead guilty to this amount rather than the possibility after the trial of getting this amount.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happened
I get
for
it.
us. That thing was denied. Is something that is what I want to say.
It's so interesting because, like, I get what you're saying. It's like it was this physical representation of like what
Mhm.
could happen as far as like really taking the church down, like, and maybe
Yeah.
not down, but like taking it off its pedestal at least, because here it is, it's all revolving around this one guy, and if we
Mhm.
can show that he is full of shit, then this is going to make some serious waves. Yeah, Mormonism has had some little things like that come up where it's like,
Mhm.
a local bishop, is, accused of, a lot of, there's been a lot of that actually, of like a local bishop being accused of, sexual impropriety with children or other members. And, but it's been on a small scale. I'd say one of the biggest kind of like things that we had that could compare to that was when all of their finances were leaked back in, I think it was like 2019 or something, where they had a lot of their financial information leaked. And again, is it true or not? And that was a big deal in Mormonism, just because it was like us being able to point to something and be like, look, they're telling you that they need your money, and they're telling you that you shouldn't feed your kids before you feed God, and look how much money they have. They don't need your money. So that was like kind of one big thing we had that could maybe compare, but it's still just not on the same level, which I'm grateful. I'm grateful that our church leaders have not been accused of any sexual impropriety, and I hope that that's because they haven't been doing anything wrong. But
Yeah.
anyway, I digress. So
Yeah. Yeah.
back to the trial. Did you want to recap at all some of the things that the Jane and John Does were saying at the sentencing hearing about Naason? Anything about that?
Yes, for sure. Thank you for sharing all that about what's going on with Mormonism, because again, the people like us, we have certain steps back that step out of religion, and
Yeah.
we sort of view we're like several layers of stepped out from what we grew up in. And uh, I've always been I'm always interested in sort of learning about the certain dynamics that play out in Mormonism, certain dynamics that play out in other organizations like Nexium, which also had a moment of reckoning.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yeah, there's just many like religious organizations to learn about that are really interesting. Um, so uh, yeah, back to June 8th, I believe June 8th. It's a Wednesday. Several weeks ago, there was a number. Basically, all of the Jane Does spoke, not in the order of 1, 2, 3, 4, but I think it was. I believe 5 was one of the last ones to speak. It was sort of out of
Yeah.
order. If people want to see this, they can check this out in Spanish on Univision's YouTube channel. We can dig for you, or you can dig yourself for June 8th to look for
Yeah.
I believe there's 2 or 3 different streams, videos that were made of several hours long, because there were breaks for this long ordeal. People can find it there. In that is in English. That is in the English that was spoken in the courtroom by the Jane Does,
Nice.
and there was some Spanish that was spoken by some people, but it was translated to English on Univision's channel. I believe Televisa or Telemundo had the streamed the thing, and live live translated it to Spanish. Basically, what I'm saying is that there's hours of footage where you can where within visually within the frame, it's always the prosecutors, but mostly for the most part, it zooms into Naason and his defense. Um, as you know, as things are being spoken, as the judge is speaking, as this person comes up to speak, you know, through the whole process. Um, the Jane Does, the Jane Does, and other speakers are not present in the frame visually. You know, no one, they never say their names. Um, yeah, but you know, these are just things that I'm describing that I listened to and watched live, and that other people listen to and watch live, and that are still available. A bunch of people have downloaded them. This is probably uploaded onto a number of YouTube channels. But what I'm saying is that like this sentencing hearing was taped in a certain way visually, you know, cinematographically. It comes out in a certain way, but you know, but the point is that, you know, listen to what these people are saying and who they're saying it to, and the dynamics of it. All the Jane Does speak. I don't think any of the John Does speak. I have not gone back to this. It's really hard to listen to it. But I'm pretty sure, but for sure, all the Jane Does speak. They describe their, you know, generally I can say they describe their upbringing within the organization, how they were sort of led to trust their environment and their how they were led to believe in a certain way about a certain interaction they were going to have with a certain person. They go into certain details. Some of it is graphic. There was at one point where Univision bleeps something, understandably, but you know, I just want to say that, you know, these are very raw, you know, for sure scripted, but still, you know, difficult to listen to. Testimonies from people that you know, I listen to, and I'm very grateful that they came forward with this stuff, as hard as it is to go through it.
Yeah.
But they, you know, people can listen to them for their own words if they want. But so I very respectfully, you know, would like to keep a balance between what I heard and what I think. And, you know, I for sure listened to them, and I heard all this stuff, and it was very difficult to go through. But you know, very respectfully to them, I would also say that, hey, if you would like to listen, if you, the viewer, would like to listen to what they have to say, you know, you go to them, and I very respectfully send everyone to go, you know, to them. Um, I don't want to like call an undue amount of attention to these people
I
and what they said,
understand.
but
Yeah.
uh,
It was
uh,
heart-wrenching. Yeah.
it was difficult. And
Yeah.
and we'll say observations that you can have, you know, given everything that I've said in the past 50 something minutes, past hour that I've said, you can take these details into account, you know, given the conspiracy theories and the beliefs that people have of Naason and who the lawyers are and whatnot. Again, the sentencing hearing cinematographically, if that, I just made the word up, you know, his point is basically it zooms in a lot on Naason, and it zooms in a lot on the defense lawyers. You can't really see anyone. You for sure don't see the Jane Does. You see the prosecutors at some points when you're zoomed out, but you know, don't let that fool you. But listen for sure to what everyone had to say. Naason, it was very clear throughout the entire taping of everything. He's always within the frame. He's basically always within the frame, unless you look at the judge. But he never looks back. He never looks back at the people that are speaking to him behind him. So this is important. You know, it's not like they're speaking at the same distance from the judge. You know, the Jane Does are sort of more back. So he never has to face them. He's always looking back. He sort of pushes his glasses up at some point. You know, it's very still for hours of testimony. He has an earpiece in him. It's being translated into Spanish. He probably knows English to some extent, and he could probably understand it, but you know, it's being translated into Spanish into his ear. He never looks back. The lawyers look back, and they, you know, are just, you know, lawyerly, you know, very you know, just keep that out of the question. I understand why he would hire these people. It's within his right, but you know, these people just look back. They sort of show no emotion. He shows no emotion. It's the prosecutors are within the frame. Sometimes they sometimes look back to the Jane Does. They sometimes just look forward and just have their head down and they listen. But again, people can just sort of look at this for themselves. But I describe it in this way for the purposes of, you know, understanding the dynamic, because that is the apex of really the entire process for the past years. What was these handful of hours where the most important people involved are all in the same room and you know, talking.
And they're finally getting a chance to publicly say what happened and how they felt and what they were thinking, and yeah, it's such a big deal. So in the end, with their sentencing hearing and everything, I guess the judge basically said something to the effect of like his hands were tied, that he couldn't give him more time than that. Was that kind of
Yeah.
what happened? Because the hope was the Jane Does, and we're trying to almost like change the judge's mind about how long to put him away, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
Um,
got it.
so through the whole years, that the highest, the worst possible thing that could happen to this dude was that he's locked away for life. Just you're going away for your whole life, whatever's left of it, or hey, we're gonna sentence you to a lot of years that ends up being your whole life. Um, without the
Right, right.
quotes. Um, so that was a possibility, but that has not happened. Instead, what ended up happening was that only he's only locked up for this certain amount of time, which could end up, not to speak badly, but respectfully, this man could die within the next decade of natural causes, of just sort of
Of
sort of
course, of
on the
course.
with how the math works out with his body and living in this in the condition of a prison. Or he could live to 110, and he could outlive what the time that he has set left to do. So like 13-ish years, taking into account what he's already served. So he could get out by 76, mid 70s, let's say. um um yeah, going into the sentencing hearing, all these people who came forward can speak, and to sort of try to plead to the judge to reject the plea that has been given, to reject the what's before him, and make people go not all the steps back, but some steps back, to hey, try this again, see if you can pin more charges on this guy.
I
you know
see.
that
I
that,
see.
that was that was a possibility, I think, that was being hoped for. And then if not that, then he could try to give the max, which he did end up. He ended up giving most what he could do. The judge did not say a lot. The judge did not say a lot. I wish he had said a lot more. I'm very glad the Jane Does, said enough. They spoke for themselves. But I'd say the main points that this judge basically said was that this is Judge Ronald Cohen of California. Was my hands are tied. Um, he gets the 16 years, 8 months. He's already served 3. So he gets, my hands are tied. He gets this amount. Um, to the Jane Does, I say that the world has heard your story. My hands are tied. To the people that abandoned the Jane Does, he says. He says, "Shame on you." Shame on you to the people who are not all of the Jane Does. There's at least one Jane Doe, we can say, that has a parent that is out because of what happened. Where she's like, "I explained this to my parent. My parent ended up helping me to get out and get involved in this thing and go through this process and so on."
There
There
you
are
go.
there are other people that are involved in this thing that whose parents were not as helpful, and whose family is not as helpful. Um, that's something. So that's something the judge said, where he said, shame on these people who did not believe, who did not believe the Jane Does, and try to help them out to as much as they could have. Um, and I guess another thing the judge said was that, I've been a judge for over 30 years, just dozens and dozens of years. And he said, I'm always surprised by the by the by the things that people would do, and the things that can come as a result of religious belief. He points out religious beliefs. He doesn't talk
Yes.
he doesn't talk about his personal
Yes.
beliefs, but he says that
As a
religious
result.
religious beliefs are involved here, and I'm always surprised by how they play out, and I just saw them play out in a certain way, is what basically what he said with that sentence.
Yeah.
And that's basically kind of all he says. I can't really think of other things he says. Those are key things he
Yeah.
says.
I
Doesn't say.
remember
Uh-huh.
someone told me that he said at one point, like, "You are a predator."
Oh,
Like, he
yes,
said
yes.
something like that, right? Yeah.
Yes, so he's pointing his words at family members of the Jane Does, people that were close to
Yeah.
him. He points his words at the Jane Does himself. He points his words also at the defendant, at
Yeah.
Naason, and he says, to you, sir, I say you're a sexual predator. Um,
Yeah.
and that's a soundbite that everyone has sort of gotten onto. And I
Yeah.
that's this is again, these sort of these remarks within these a span of minutes that I'm giving a description to, that people can watch for themselves. And I'm saying it a
Of
little bit out of order, but um
Of course, no problem.
all these things, this is the very height of the entire process where
Yeah,
very precious religious beliefs by certain people are being held and defended in a certain way. And we managed to get these words out of these people who were very close to the process, and they spoke for themselves. And um, I don't know. I kind of just wish that everyone could without bringing undue and disrespectful attention to the Jane Does, but I wish everyone could listen to what they had to say, because they had to say
yeah.
what they had to say, and the world could technically listen to them. And um, I just hope that their words and their decisions to come forward, and even the way that things have played out, I just hope that helps other people heal and come out if they have had something done to them, that they come out and feel the bravery to do it. Um,
I hope it
yeah,
continues to
there's a lot
ripple. I hope
for
it
sure.
continues to ripple as far as like causing waves in the church that will allow people to at least not view it as perfect anymore and not
Yeah.
view him as perfect, because it really is dangerous. I want to say a couple of things. One thing about the Jane and John Does that came forward again, kind of already said this, but I just feel like my heart is really like really touched with their courage, because them coming from forward with this is probably one of the hardest things they've ever done. Maybe the hardest thing they'll ever have to do. But the fact that they did it and that he is now unable to cause more children harm is absolutely incredible. So to the Jane and John Does that had the courage to stand up even when they knew it was going to make them possibly lose their family and their community, and to deal with all of this publicly, like, amazing. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing that, and I'm sure you saved countless, children the same abuse, and how amazing is that they were able to do that. And it's just incredible. The other thing I wanted to say was, you talked about, the possibility of like, well, if they had given him 20 or 30 years, he could have more likely died in prison. And
Hmm.
respectfully, I
Yeah.
hope he does die in prison.
Uh-huh.
And I say that and I'm kind of laughing because it feels weird to say, but I genuinely mean it because I think that, okay, it's gonna sound a little nerdy, but that's okay. That
Yes.
Spider-Man quote, like, "With great power comes great responsibility." This
Yeah.
is this is that, right? Being the
Yeah.
leader of this church gives you a ton of power. And the truth is, there's a lot of people that can't handle a lot of power well. And clearly, Naason is one of those people. And the fact that he can't handle that amount of power well, to
Hmm.
me, means that if he gets out, there's a very good chance that he's going to abuse that power again. And not to mention that, like, maybe there was abuse going on that wasn't just sexual, right? But other abuse too, like, financially or manipulating members. I mean, when you have that amount of people backing you up, and you can take whatever you want, and it's a scary, scary thing when someone can take whatever they want. You got to be a really strong fucking person to lead a church and to do it well. And clearly is not. And I'm not even saying like that other people are. I think that a lot of people are not strong people. And I think that the more power someone has, the more ability it has to corrupt them. Not because power corrupts, but because it forces you to face a lot more temptation than you otherwise would, right? Like, someone like me has substantially less temptation around, money or things like that, just
Yeah.
because it's like it's not available to me. So
Yeah.
the more, it's available to you, the stronger you have to be. And clearly he's not a strong guy, you know.
Yeah.
So
For sure.
so respectfully, I hope he doesn't make it out alive.
Yeah, so I would say that yeah, he's going to be in there for a handful of time. I've never stepped foot in the jail. A lot of these people, within the church have never stepped foot in the jail because for sure I will give them credit that a lot of people within the church are genuine and wanting to have a religious community, are genuine in their belief in God and Jesus, which billions of other
Yeah.
people have, and they're genuine about wanting to live a upright, moral, life. And part of that includes, not getting into jail. And so a lot of them don't get into jail. And so that can, but I bring that up because, that can bring a lot of misunderstanding of the whole situation. But basically, what I can say about what I guess is his life in jail, his life in prison will be like, is that he's no longer in jail. He's going to a prison. It's a different community. It's a different cell. It's a different array of people. People who are caught up in sexual crimes against children are not are, to my understanding, not very welcome within the communities and gang dynamics and other dynamics within a prison. The people
Yep,
that have done
yep,
things against children we're pretty sure he's being kept separate from everyone else. He
yeah.
probably doesn't have much contact with everyone else. It could be that the church his family, whoever, is gonna put a lot of money into his account to buy whatever little goodies he can while he's there. But it's not going to be nice. He's going to be gone for a long time. Well, one thing that has gone on through this whole process is that he has supposedly been writing letters to the entire church, which are read like on Sundays or just key days,
Right, right.
and a lot of people argue that, and I believe them to an extent, that no, that there's no way that he is talking to everybody this constantly, because there's a whole process of checking mail and whatnot, and there's no way that he is writing a letter on like a Friday and then it having be read on Sunday after a certain event
I
goes on.
see.
So some people carry a skepticism towards the announcement, towards the reading of these letters, saying that no, this is the bishops that are writing them.
I
Um,
see. Okay, that's
mhm,
interesting. That's interesting. Right, right.
yeah, and I can't say
To
that I
try
have
to
these.
keep the membership strong,
Yeah.
I could see that. I could see them being motivated to do that. Like Naason is, got another message for us today. Yeah, I could see that.
hmm And
That's really
it's
interesting.
and it's there's a lot of things to say, I guess, about these messages in the early weeks of the arrest, what they've done in the past handful of weeks. But no, they're basically a tool of just of the narrative to try to control it, where hey, we are here are messages from the dude who is leading this whole organization. um he may be jailed away from us, and we've probably not seen him in years for sure. Only a handful of people have seen him in the courtroom, and but he nevertheless is speaking to us. His authority, his divine authority, cannot be contained to bricks.
Yeah.
It extends out through everyone. And so, is it the case that the people at the top of the organization and the family, the Joaquin family, who has had all the apostles come out of their lineage, is it the case that they're going to try to raise another apostle, where there's one in jail and there's now one that is outside of jail, and that we don't know. That was something we were all
I
thinking
was
about, if that was going to happen.
curious
Yeah.
if his son was gonna take over or something like that.
So Nason's grandfather is the founder of the whole church. His
Right.
father, Samuel,
Was the apostle
Eusebius
before him, right.
slash Aaron, and then Samuel, his father, was apostle before for 50 years, from 63 no from 64 to 2014. And then
Yeah,
Nason has been in power since the last 2 weeks of 2014,
yeah,
and so he's someone who's only come to power within the past handful of years. And like you were saying earlier about how this is a man who managed to abuse the level of power that he had around him. It wasn't just the
right,
amount of
right.
money that he was wielding. It wasn't just the situation within which he managed to get himself alone with underage people. It was it's also this other miswielding of the power that he had over people's deep-seated religious beliefs that they hold dear to them, that they find most
Yeah.
precious to them, that they are on alert about, trying not to harm, and that they sort of got whatever sense of identity behind. um
Yeah.
yeah, those are layers of abuse that he has done.
Okay, so, this has all come to this big moment, right, where he pleads guilty. What do you foresee happens next with the
hmm
church and with, legally and everything going on?
Yes, so the man is locked away. This criminal case is over with. It's the criminal case is over with. Basically, what's going to happen at later this year is that now the civil cases start to kick in. There's a woman by the name of
Oh,
Xochitl Martin, who first came out and was first known, did a press conference and other things like that with some lawyers that she has in February 2020. That's when she came forward. She was not involved in the criminal case at all. Though
Got
she
it.
probably knew some of the Jane Does, but she was not involved in it. I'm pretty sure she's not named in any of these documents, in any of the
Sure.
proceedings. But she has a criminal case that she has put forward because she alleges that she was controlled and trafficked since an early age, and then even into her
Wow.
later ages, she became a sort of groomer type of person for Naason, and
Mhm.
and so people have people on the ex-LLDM side and people within LLDM, but the people outside of LLDM have different attitudes towards about this person. But this person has a civil case that is happening. I believe there's something happening in September, and
Got
it
it.
is not just Naason; it is other people around him. The criminal case
Yeah.
was just against Naason. The civil case is larger against other people around him. There's another civil case, which I don't think I can say when that is going to begin or how exactly that works or interacts with everything else. But it's been on file for well over a year, and it's just been waiting for this criminal case to end.
Yeah.
It is filed by I believe it's a woman who goes by the initials of HF, or it goes
Okay.
by like two initials in a different document. Um, that doesn't just go after Nathan, but I think goes around people around him. All of this is to say that the criminal case is over for the past, the thing that we've been looking
Yeah.
at for the past 3 years. There are these civil cases that are coming forward. I believe within the past week there is a lawyer or woman. I don't know this person's name. I believe it was like a 3-part name. It's a woman who basically represents the Jane Does, and I
Oh,
think they are in the process of doing some sort of civil case. So that is,
okay.
in very few words, is what I would say is that is what's sort of coming down the pipeline. And I don't know. I've taken steps back to sort of just take deep breaths over what just happened before I
It's a
really
lot.
before what I really say about these other things. But
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
uh, I just hope that everything that's happened has, if there are other victims out there, I hope these people will come forward and feel encouraged by what just happened and not discouraged by how little time was given. These people can add more time if they come forward and are credible in what they have to say. And uh, um, that's something I'll say. Another thing I'll say is that this is something I forgot to say earlier, but one of the Jane Does
Yeah.
that spoke was a niece of Nason's, and so there is this other layer of like, something that happened within their family. Um,
Right. Right.
uh, and these all these people, very respectfully, they speak for themselves and they talk about what they went through.
Yeah.
Another thing I'll say is that um, the headquarters of La Luz del Mundo is this church, the big white wedding cake looking church is I believe this is still the case, but for I think since its inception in the 80s, it's the largest temple in all of Latin America. It's the largest religious temple in all of Latin America. And so I bring that up because that is a certain show of power of the organization
Yeah.
where at the very least physically it can impose himself this way, even if it is physically and
Yeah.
figuratively. And there's not for sure 5 million members within this organization. There's for sure less than a million. Um, that's a whole other topic,
They claim to have 5 million, but yeah, we suspect it's less than a million. Just to clarify.
mhm.
Go ahead.
Yes, for sure. And there's a lot more I can say there about that. But I mean to say that at the very least
Mhm.
at the very least they can impose themselves physically in that sort of way, and that they wield a certain sort of political and institutional power within Mexico
Yeah.
that it
Absolutely.
is harder to budge because it's over there.
Yeah.
And again, the dude had to get arrested and tried and everything in California while he was getting a different sort of treatment while in Mexico. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm glad that the organization as a whole, with people that have their faces out in the public and people that don't have their faces out in the public so far and maybe not yet. Um, the organization is coming under a lot of scrutiny. There are documentaries that are coming out that are in the works on this thing. I believe from the likes of Netflix, from I believe A&E. There are for sure at least like 3 different documentaries ish that are
Yeah.
coming out on the organization later on in the year. That is full length sort of explanations of the thing. But for sure this whole month, um, this whole month. Televisa, Milenio, Univision, etc. All these
Yeah.
mostly Spanish channels have been covering the church a lot, and I think very adequately within the time that they have, the segments that they have, they do a good job of explaining the sort of the kind of religious belief that is housed in this part of Mexico, this part of Guadalajara that has caused so much of this story. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
on the day of the sentencing, there was the churches were having meetings, and they were having congregations to keep people away from the news. The church had very explicitly, just like it has the entire time, told people to not look at the news. Um,
Yeah.
you had you had you had news reporters that were going to the neighborhood of the church in Guadalajara and just sort of visiting people and recording what was being blared out in the streets on the speakers to like everyone. It's not just the people in that temple; it's the people out in the streets. They're being given a lot of propaganda about
Oh my
this is
gosh.
um and it's hard to look at because the reporters go in and they explain the thing well, but they sort of go in like sort of interviewing these people as if they're like um, as not zoo animals, but sort of just these
I
people act
see. I
these
see.
people acting out these roles. Where if you interviewed any member out on the street, they're all going to tell you, "I don't want to talk to you." They're all going to tell you, "No, I know
Yeah.
who he is." They probably won't say he's lying, but they'll say, "I know who he is. This is not real." They would all say the same things. This is
Yeah.
a phenomena of groupthink that is really hard to burst its bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I would say all these things.
Last question for you as we're wrapping up that I'll say, unless you have anything else to add, is that have you noticed at all people leaving the religion more because of, I mean, I know the guilty plea just barely
Mm,
happened, but because of just the trial and everything kind of like maybe solidifying some people's previous doubts, like has this, has this shook the rug, for a lot of people, you think?
yeah, so it's definitely shaken the rug. A lot of people have felt empowered by what happened, even though uh, some the Fred Raja, the lawyer, once said, "A
Yeah.
bird in the hand is worth two in this bush." That is mean to saying that you should be at least happy with what you have here, where the dude's going to be locked away for over a decade more.
Yeah.
And people feel empowered by that, and they've gotten out. There has not been this sort of gigantic "I'm Spartacus" moment that I was sort of hoping for and trying to speak into
Yes.
existence, but
Yeah.
people have gotten out for sure. People who were streaming and discussing this stuff saw record numbers. The again a lot of media attention came to this thing, and there's more on the way that is scheduled and that is planned. Um, that there are other people who have become much more active on the subreddit, on discussion boards where people try to
Yeah.
interact with one another. And um, I've seen since the last time we spoke, so prior to this past decision, prior to
Yeah.
the past month, there's also been other people that have started to speak out. And I want to name drop some people, but on TikTok, I'm not on TikTok at all, but I know that someone who's very popular is a woman by the name of Sarah Manjarrez, something like that. Sarah
Yeah.
MAN, something like that. I'm not too sure. I can't remember off the top of my head, but this person basically makes content on TikTok, and it has apparently gone viral to some extent,
Yeah.
and that's really cool because
About the
um,
religion, kind of?
about the
Yeah.
religion, and sort of gives updates on what's going on and how she got out of it, and weird
That's
customs that
really
went on.
cool. That's
So
really
that's
cool.
cool. There's a podcast that started called Salí de una secta, which means I got out of a cult. That is basically about La Luz del Mundo, and it's run by two women who are in Tijuana, somewhere in northern Mexico, close to
Yeah.
California, somewhere over
Yeah.
there. I listen to them all the time. They are in
Great.
Spanish. Sarah does English stuff. These other people are in Spanish,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's
Good
still
to know.
it's content that it's out there, and
Yeah.
it's very
Yeah.
important, I think, for a
And
lot of
we'll
people.
link all of this below for everybody.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah,
And there's
including some other resources. Yeah.
yes, for sure. And there's a lot of other resources. And another important resource is Virginia Beckett, who has
Yeah.
been translating and uploading documents and whatnot to YouTube and to other platforms. Isaias
Good.
Alvarado from Univision is very important. But yeah, there's an array of people. There's an array of
That's
things that you can read.
awesome.
And there's a stark difference between the people that are outside of this religion and the people that are outside, and to the people that are inside. The people that are outside
Yeah.
are looking for all these things and reading these things and gathering a different set of knowledge than
Yeah.
the dogmatism that is the engine on like the other side of
Yes,
this
yes.
thing.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad to hear that like there's only the amount of resources for ex La Luz del Mundo members is growing. Because
Yeah, for sure.
I know that it was harder to establish more of a community for you guys than it was like for Mormons, because there's such a danger, a lot more so with, with the shunning and just, I don't know how scary people can be toward ex-members, as opposed to like with Mormonism, it's not quite as extreme. So I'm just glad to hear that the community is
Yeah, for sure.
growing. Very, very happy about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Anything else? I think that's pretty
No.
much it, recapping everything today.
Yeah.
So
No, just you're
yeah.
freaking you're I will say, I'm glad that I've totally kept up. I'm happy that I came across you to speak to you the first time around, and then saw your content prior to speaking to you. Have seen your content since then, and it's really cool. I think it's super useful, and I've definitely spoken about you to people that I know online, to people that I spoke to people that I know in person, and we do the stuff to be genuine about the
Yeah.
power of these religious ideas, and how to live all our lives, as nicely and morally as we can, and not just having to,
Yeah.
and not having to sort of rely on these sets of ideas that have consequences
Yeah.
that we try to speak out against. But uh,
Yes, yes.
yeah, thank you so much for
Very
using
well
your
said.
platform too. I think it's really useful also for me to speak to someone who's been
Yeah.
outside and who has not been as deep in the trenches the whole time as I have.
Yes, yes.
And this also provides like a sense of sort of clarity for me to try to condense all the thoughts to someone like you. You're awesome, and
Yeah,
yeah, thank you
thank
for having me
you.
on. It's really cool.
Oh, AJ, I was so excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a really cool discussion. We make a good team. So I'm sure we've got more videos coming, and especially, as more of the civil cases play out, but also
Yeah,
I'd love to
that too.
do more videos where we just kind of discuss like, yeah, people and their vulnerabilities and spirituality and religion, and like, what does it all mean? And I think I'm excited to talk to you more about those things moving forward, because I'm getting
Yes, for sure.
fiber soon. That's
Okay.
really gonna make online stuff way easier. So, all right, okay, AJ, thank you to everyone watching this. Like I said, we're gonna link all the resources below. We're also gonna link all the other videos me and AJ have done together, and my other LLDM videos. And thank you to our Patreon supporters. And if you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, there's extra content you can watch as cheap as $5 a month, and you can cancel at any time. So, okay, I will see you guys later. Peace.